Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions. The mystery of Dwarka, India's sunken city 12,000 years old. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. The Mahabharata, one of the oldest texts in human history, describes the city of Dwarka as a golden capital built by the god Krishna on the western coast of India, protected by massive sea walls, containing 900,000 royal palaces of crystal and silver, and ultimately swallowed by the sea when Krishna departed the earthly realm. For centuries, scholars treated this as pure mythology, the embellished cosmology of a religious epic, not historical record. Then in 1983, marine archaeologists from India's National Institute of Oceanography began investigating the seafloor of the Gulf of Khambhat off the Gujarat coast and found something that should not have been there. Stone structures, walls, and architectural remains spread across the ocean floor at depths of up to 40 meters. A second site discovered in 2001 appeared to be even older, with carbonized wood and artifacts yielding dates potentially as old as 9,000 to 12,000 years ago. The ancient texts had been pointing toward a real city all along. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. What separates a civilization from a collection of villages? Not technology alone, but organization, the capacity to coordinate thousands of people toward shared goals, to store and transmit knowledge across generations, to build institutions that outlast individuals. These are the hallmarks archaeologists look for when they define a civilization. And for most of the 20th century, the oldest examples they could identify dated to around 3,500 BC in Mesopotamia and Egypt. But that benchmark has been steadily eroding. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, discovered in the 1990s and excavated since, consists of massive stone circles with elaborately carved pillars depicting animals, abstract symbols, and human figures. It dates to at least 10,000 BC, roughly 6,000 years before Stonehenge, and older than the invention of pottery or agriculture in the conventional sequence. Someone built it. Someone organized the quarrying, transport, and precise placement of limestone pillars weighing up to 20 tons. Someone knew what they were building and why. That level of coordinated effort implies a society more complex than any model of 10,000 BC predicted. Göbekli Tepe is not alone. Every few years, a new site expands the timeline further. Ancient stone structures in Indonesia have been dated to 25,000 years ago. Complex astronomical alignments have been found at sites in Africa predating Egypt by millennia. The human story is older, richer, and more turbulent than the standard narrative allows. When we look at lost civilizations, we are not chasing fantasy. We are attempting to recover chapters of a history far longer than any currently recognized textbook will tell. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding Dwarka India's Sunken City 12,000 years old is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The submerged ruins near modern Dwarka in Gujarat were first systematically investigated by marine archaeologist S.R. Rao in the 1980s. Rao's team found stone anchors, pottery, architectural features including walls and bastions, and triangular stone anchors consistent with ancient Indian maritime technology at depths between 5 and 12 meters, consistent with a city flooded by post-glacial sea level rise. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered, in 2001, the National Institute of Ocean Technology discovered a second, deeper site in the Gulf of Khambhat, approximately 40 meters below the present surface, and covering an area of approximately 9 kilometers by 2 kilometers. Side-scan sonar images revealed geometric structures, streets, and what appear to be collapsed walls extending over a large area. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Carbonized wood samples recovered from the Gulf of Khambhat site were sent to multiple laboratories. The National Geophysical Research Institute in Hyderabad reported a carbon-14 date of approximately 9,500 years BP. A sample sent to the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in the United States yielded a date of approximately 7,500 to 8,000 years BP. Both dates, if applied to the structures, would make the site older than any recognized urban civilization on Earth. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the Mahabharata and other ancient Sanskrit texts describe Dwarka as built on land reclaimed from the sea and ultimately returned to the sea, a description consistent with a coastal city that existed during lower sea level conditions and was submerged as sea levels rose after the last ice age. The texts give specific geographic coordinates that align with the Gulf of Khambhat region. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of the deeper Gulf of Khambhat site has been challenged by several archaeologists who argue that the sonar images show natural geological formations rather than artificial structures, and that the artifact samples may have been transported from other contexts rather than being in situ. The debate remains unresolved because the site has not been comprehensively excavated by diving archaeologists. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: the shallower Dwarka site, investigated by S.R. Rao, is far less controversial. The artifacts recovered, stone anchors, pottery shards, and architectural elements, are accepted as genuine archaeological remains consistent with a Bronze Age settlement submerged by gradual sea level rise. Taken together, These facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations. And in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Dwarka, India's sunken city 12,000 years old. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that both the shallow and deep Dwarka sites are genuine ancient settlements submerged by post-glacial sea level rise, and the deeper site, if artificial, represents evidence of pre-agricultural civilization far older than anything currently recognized. This view holds that the Mahabharata preserves a genuine historical memory of a civilization that predates the conventional timeline by thousands of years. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the shallow Dwarka site is genuine and represents a Bronze Age city consistent with late Harappan or pre-Harappan maritime culture. The deeper Gulf of Khambhat site, however, shows natural geological formations misidentified as architecture by sonar imaging, and the artifact dates reflect transported organic material rather than in situ construction. Only the Bronze Age identification is warranted. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that the Dwarka discoveries are consistent with a much broader pattern of submerged prehistoric settlements along India's coastline, most of which have not yet been systematically investigated. The true extent of pre-Bronze Age coastal civilization in the Indian subcontinent may be completely unknown because most of it lies on the continental shelf, now covered by tens of meters of seawater. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Dwarka, India's sunken city 12,000 years old, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes stone anchors recovered from the Dwarka site by S.R. Rao's team are consistent in design with anchors found at other Indian Ocean Bronze Age maritime sites and differ in design from natural geological formations, providing physical confirmation of ancient human maritime activity in the region. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented pottery sherds from the Dwarka excavations have been dated by thermoluminescence to between 3,000 and 1,500 years BC, consistent with the late Indus Valley Civilization period and confirming a genuine Bronze Age occupation of the now submerged coastal zone. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the geographic correlation between the ancient Sanskrit text's description of Dwarka and the actual location of the submerged structures has been noted by multiple researchers as too specific to be coincidental, including references to specific geographic features of the Gulf of Khambhat coastline. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Dwarka, India's sunken city 12,000 years old. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Dwarka discoveries have sparked intense debate in Indian archaeology about the relationship between ancient texts and physical evidence. The Mahabharata and Vedic texts have historically been treated as mythology by Western-trained archaeologists and as literal history by traditionalist Indian scholars, with little room for nuance. The underwater finds suggest that both positions are too absolute. Ancient texts can preserve genuine geographical and historical memory even when their supernatural elements are legendary. The serious scientific investigation of India's submerged coastlines is still in its early stages. What lies beneath those shallow tropical waters may rewrite South Asian history. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis. And the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Dwarka, India's sunken city 12,000 years old, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Dwarka ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.